Hello, everyone, and good whatever moment of this wonderful day you are enjoying on your time zones. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good very early morning, or good very, very late night, depending on how we look at time zones. It is such a joy to welcome you on a conversation part of our March series. And today we will be talking about innovative leadership and even more in detail about how we nurture resilience and adaptability in a fast paced business reality. I do see comments coming in, so that is always, always great. First, because we know that we are not stuck in some back loop on LinkedIn. So it's good to see that technology is working. And please do keep those comments popping up. Let us know where you're listening in from or where you're watching us from, and help us travel vicariously around the world through your comments. My name is Minola Jacques. I will be your co-host for the next hour. We have Jessa working her magic backstage, keeping us safe. And we have an amazing lineup of speakers. I will ask them to come on stage. And while they get used to seeing their faces next to each other, I will just continue to wholeheartedly welcome everybody in the audience and encourage you to use the comments generously. Consider that your own conversation space, whatever it is that we are tackling in our stage conversation. Keep dropping your own ideas, your own take on the matter, and help us grow and learn from each other. I think that is the wonderful value and magic of this community. Now, I will welcome everyone on the screen, and I will get the housekeeping rules out of the way first. I would ask each and every one of you panelists, when you are not contributing, to stay on mute, because that first keeps us safe from echo, and second, and I am, getting the cat out of the bag. When you unmute yourselves, that's also my secret cue that you want to jump back into the conversation. So the first round is very, very easy. I will ask you to firstly introduce yourselves and do share with us, before we jump very, very deep into the topic, what exactly made you say, oh, I'm going to be there for 1 hour with my full energy and with all my insights? What exactly is it about this topic that makes it meaningful to you personally? So, Susie, it's so great to see you.
Hi, Manola. How are you? Hi, everybody else on the panel and that's watching today. So my name's Susie. I'm from Canada. I'm the CEO of Advice to Rise. So I'm coming to you from basically career and strategy, finance and HR, and then chief people in the tech space. So to answer the question around adaptability, and why I'd want to talk about this, I think it's the number one skill this year. If you look at LinkedIn, it's the one that you really need to master this, and I don't think it's going away. So I'm all about positive action and having an action oriented approach. So I love this topic because it gives a practical discussion and actionable outcomes, right, for people to move back forward and think about how do you adapt, because it's not that easy. Change is hard. So that's my 2 cents on this one, but looking forward to chatting with everyone today. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. Tanal, good to see you. It's been a while since we shared the screen.
Yeah, great to see you, Manola, and everybody else. I'm Tanal. I am an HR leader here based in California. I have about 20 years or so experience, 10 of them in the HR function. I started my own career by building an organization and worked my way through those challenges. And so I'm very familiar with this concept of adaptability and resilience. I'm also a woman, person of color, and an immigrant. And so I feel like with all of these things, this concept of resilience was preconditioned into me. And so when I saw the topic, I was like, yeah, let's spend an hour talking about it. I'm sure we all have mixed feelings around adaptability and the word resilience itself, and we'll be sure to deep dive into the nuances.
Wonderful. Thank you. And we have the storyteller Sundari in the house today.
Hey, hi everyone. Really lovely to be here today and closer to Women's Day in an all women panel. So that feels special as well. So I say that I help leaders be human at work, and I do that three ways. One, as an organizational consultant, using storytelling to drive outcomes. Two, as a wisdom faculty, so that you catch them relatively younger into their work journey, when they are like having done some work, they're doing the executive MBA programs and looking at how we can help them be work towards being human at work. And thirdly, by being a mentor and a coach. So those are the typical three hats that I steer over. For me, I think I'm going to probably focus more on the innovative leadership part. So it's not just about having the vision and coming up with a great idea. We have enough visionaries and visionary monks or futuristic monks in the world. Uh, but it's about creating that safe space where curiosity is encouraged and you're building a culture where creativity flourishes. So I'm going to orient a lot of our discussion on this towards that. And I'm really looking forward to hearing from everyone and their experiences.
Thank you. Thank you so very much. Dalit, always a joy welcoming you on a panel.
Thank you. Very, very happy to be here. So I'm the lead. I'm an organizational consultant based in Israel, and I'm working with leaders all around the globe and making sure organizations are preparing themselves towards the future. So for me, I'm referring to the fast-paced that business are growing and changing those days. And this is why I think they need to gain a lot of resilience and adaptability. And this is why I picked very quickly this topic and very happy to speak about it together with you, everyone here.
Thank you. And then I am getting very used to seeing you at least once every week. So let's keep this pattern going.
I don't know if I should apologize for that, but I'll just say it's nice to see you again. I'm Jen Fox. I'm calling in from Princeton, New Jersey. I saw somebody from a dreary Alabama, and it is the same thing here today. So I call myself a resilience builder, and I have really decided to focus on resilience in this next chapter of my life and my career. My beliefs and experience come from two primary areas. One is being the mother of three. There is no better training. I think I face more setbacks before 8 a.m. than some people do in a year. Susie, I see you. So shout out to all the caregivers there. And then second is from my career, which has been in and out of organizations within the HR function, and for over 25 years. And recently, and I think accelerated by the pandemic, I feel like organizations have lost their way. That resilience has been conflated with grit, grind it out, get back to normal, make us more comfortable, and focus on the bottom line. And I cannot go back to just the way things are. We need to put our people first again when we're thinking about our business strategies and look at the impact of the people in our organization. So that's really where I come from. I'm so excited to have another great discussion on this topic today.
Thank you so very much, everyone. And I will just very, very quickly jump on the weather wagon, and it's also chilly and rainy here in Switzerland. But irrespective of our weather, I do believe that this conversation will feel like sunshine. So thank you so very much for being here. And before we start getting those questions in the comments, I do want to tell everybody that this conversation is being recorded. So you can always go back and enjoy it again, or recommend it, or in case you need to drop off early, don't worry, you will find it either in our LinkedIn space or hackinghrlab.io. Now, I do sense a lot of energy around resilience and adaptability, but I do want to take a few minutes and look at innovative leadership, because this will be the lens through which we will talk about resilience and adaptability. We touched on these two quite frequently over the past couple of months. But one thing that I will do, I will keep all of us honest to always come back and look at these two through the lens of innovative leadership. So just to outline our conversation space today, how does innovative leadership show up in organizations? What are some of the behaviors linked to it. And also, there are extra points available for those of you who can touch on examples of what we usually associate with innovative leadership, but they might not be innovative leadership per se. And I will just leave this question open, and we will consider this round as a dress rehearsal for the unmute button. So wherever inspiration strikes, please jump in. Let's see who has been practicing. Sundari.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned examples. So, right there, that was my hook. Yeah. I think it's very simply, it's about approaching problems with a solution oriented mindset and asking what if and why not, rather than just taking things for granted in some ways. And I remember Thomas Friedman was in a chat with Kathy Engelbert, who was a Deloitte CEO, and she was saying that future of work sounds very ominous. I'd rather think of it as work of the future or work in the future. And she asked him, "What do you call work of the future?" And he said, "Just being radically open." And he gave an example about you keep thinking that whatever can be done will be done. So they were talking about GE, General Electric. So General Electric woke up one day in 2013 and said, I'm going to figure out how to take out most of the weight of a fastener that fastens on an aeroplane engine to the wing of an aeroplane. So anything that can take a weight of an aeroplane means you save on fuel. So it's a good thing. So what do you look at? How do you look at reducing that weight? And they said, of course, we are all engineers here in GE. We can come up with a solution. But they said, no, let's not do that. We live in a world where we can take advantage of brains of anybody, anywhere. So they threw out a contest. They got out of this engineering site called GrabCAD, and they called it the jump ball movement. And they said that they offered prize money, $20,000, 7,000 to the winner, and the rest between the others. There were 10 finalists that they selected based on the recommendations that they gave. And the actual finalist was not an aeronautical engineer. They were not an American or somebody came who was like coming from the area of that work. It was an Indonesian 21-year-old guy by the name of Ari Kurniawan. And he took out 80% of the weight of the fastener. And the thing for GE was that we have the best talent. And if we just look at it as a flat world scenario, we are not going to get innovative. We need to really look at things differently and go across the spectrum and look at where in the world can I find my talent. And this is where, again, linking it to organizations, how can you go beyond and look at not just talent, solutions everywhere, instead of just thinking that we need to go linear and lateral.
Thank you, Sundari. Susie.
So that's an amazing example, and I smile for various reasons. One, because I grew up in GE and a lot of their different development programs, and two, I'm sitting here today for the first time in years. I came to the GE office because I'm going to be doing some stuff near here and in the healthcare space. So, anyways, that was just too ironic that I had to mention. But I think that your example is very well received in terms of I was having a discussion yesterday about connections. Right. And how today people are saying it's so hard to meet people. And number one thing they're working on is networking, et cetera. Right. And I'm always in the stance of it's not about networking, it's about relationship building. And I was talking to an expert in this space that actually maps this out. And he said most people in work today work in silos and only have, a couple of, connections. Right. And that doesn't lead to innovation. Right. You don't even know how to maneuver and how to just go through the organization. And we were talking about GE. So this is funny because it's like a GE week. And because for example, when I was in GE, I used to work in their leadership program. So I was in their finance program and then corporate audit. And these programs were global in nature. So when you're in these programs, you get together in person, you have conversations, you make personal connections, and then people go all over the company, right? And then generally these people would stay 10 to 15, these days are gone, you know what I mean, in terms of where the market's at now, but they would stay 10 to 15 years with the organization, and the connections would drive the company forward as well as, just, your relationships and your that you're trying to build, right? A lot of people want to do that personally. But like if I wanted to get something done and I didn't know how to do it, I would probably know someone who was in China or know someone who would know someone in China that we could talk to their office, right? So I think innovative leadership, it is, like creativity is something that it is going to be the game changer in the world of AI and where you can look up everything. And we have this, generation of digital nomads coming through the workplace. So it is going to look different. I loved your example, Sudari, in terms of what GE did there, because I think that's going to be it. Like it's like open sourced code, right? Like no one's trying to solve things within their walls anymore. And you have to think about how can you do that, but also while keeping in balance your company and like what they're comfortable with and what the rules are for NDAs too, right? So it's like just a new space to navigate.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, super G, right? Like let's go G. We're like total promo today. Yeah.
Jen.
Sponsored by, I think that's funny. Susie, also shout out to the fellow Canadian. I grew up in Calgary, so it's always nice to be on a panel with another Canadian. So in preparation for this, and Manol, I'm glad you're, sort of pausing us on the resilience adaptability to start with this. I actually, in thinking about this, preparing for the panel, thought, what does innovation really even mean? I know on our panel last week, we talked about, we throw around these words all the time, but then it's stopping to think about what do they actually mean? And do we have a, consistent definition? And so certainly to build on, what Sundari and Susie, just said is I think a lot of times the innovation is focused on, the ideation and the what we're doing and the what we're doing. There's another part of the definition of innovation, which is about creating value. And it's a really key piece of innovation. And that makes me think about how innovative leadership now really needs to focus on and get back to understanding values. That's what do our customers value in a very, very fast-paced changing, economy? What do our employees value? And how do we align those things? And how do we create the value for those people? And I think that we talk a lot about corporate values all the time, and they end up being sort of the 5, catchy words on the wall or in the handbook somewhere. And I think that the most success I've ever seen is when usually the people team takes the time to really operationalize what those values are, break them down into really observable, understandable behaviors. So, you can't say transparency is a value without helping people to understand that does not mean you will have access to all the financial data. So I mean that's an extreme example, but I do think that when we're talking about innovation, we need to balance the what we're focused on and all the big ideas and the technology with the people that are doing it and what are they valuing, and then being able to constantly be revisiting the values we set out 20 years ago or 10 years ago or goodness gracious, even 4 years ago at this point may not be actually true. So keeping our finger on the pulse with our people and figuring out how we can create the most value in terms of ownership and job satisfaction while they are working on the things that will deliver the value to the customer.
Dalit.
Yeah, just to continue, what all of you said, which I, of course, highly connect to. For me, when I'm thinking about innovative leadership, first of all, I think to lead for itself, it's very innovative. And it means that you need to be the leader, you need to set the stage, and for that you need to be very innovative to do so. But I also thought about setting some frame, and I'm working with few leaders in different companies, which I find that the leaders or the organization who has innovative leadership or innovation in general are those who have leaders who are setting the frame and actually let their people just be and do what they know what to do and how to do it, and not micromanage them or not telling them what to do and all the bits and bytes. So they are giving them the freedom within this frame that they're setting, in order to be creative, in order to innovate, and also to change and to do new things time and time again. So for me, innovative leadership, it's also about giving this freedom and setting the stage for others to really shine in what they do.
Tanal, would you like to add anything?
Yeah. Interesting, very interesting conversation coming at it from an innovative leadership perspective. So, it reminds me of a research that was done by Gartner that said over 50% of CEOs believe that leadership has gotten tougher this year. So talk about the year of resilience. Talk about really pulling through. We're seeing developments in AI trying to keep up there. The scope of the HR leader is expanding beyond what it used to be. Now we're dealing with mental well-being, dealing with changing technologies, while also trying to actually put our own masks on and being our own, making our own resilience stronger. And so what I wanted to touch on was what Jen was talking about. And, it's really, really important to start at the basics and define what innovation means to the organization, define what resilience means to the organization, and tease it out in terms of what are the values that you're looking at. So if we were to break this down, when you think about innovation and in the concept of adaptability and resilience, there are three things that come to mind. One is being very clear. And two, I believe it was Sundari who mentioned this about community, making sure that people have the space to deliberate. And three, failing forward. That safety and certainty that you will be able to experiment and move forward beyond what is the norm. And it's okay to think differently and play the long game instead of just watching the quarter after quarter results. And so that's where I'm looking at it from a resilience factor, in the sense that one, building organizational resilience and innovation is going to be very tough if we don't come at it from a personal perspective first. You have to actually make sure that the mindset is there, both at an individual level, at the team level, before it can get to the organizational level.
I really, really loved how we touched on the fact that innovative leadership and innovation are not necessarily one and the same. And I do feel that simply going into this from a semantics, but also from, what they actually mean and how they feed each other, it's a whole new, if not panel, if not a whole series, at least a panel. But Staying with our topic today, I do remember I was recently in a conversation with Jeremy Utley. He leads the D School with Stanford University, so the School of Design. And he said that the most innovative companies, they have almost a counterintuitive key performance indicator for innovation. And that is the minimum threshold of the initiatives and ideas that they actually kill year on year. And they say that if we don't hit at least 60% of ideas that we deem as not okay, we are not stretching ourselves wide enough and ambitious enough. So that pretty much says that innovation is something, I was reminded of this quote from Sir Winston Churchill, that success is going from failure to failure without loss of enthusiasm. And if we look at this, then I do feel a lot of resilience embedded into innovation. So I would invite all of you, let's take a few minutes and really talk about resilience in organizations. But can we also look at what is personal resilience and what is organizational resilience? What is process resilience? What is governance resilience? Because oftentimes I feel that in workplaces we over index on the personal resilience, and it's almost as if we ask people to compensate personally for systemic shortcomings. So, Jen, I see you unmuted, I see you nodding. Would you please lead us into this?
I'm going to try and keep this short, but you touched on one of my hottest buttons, Manola, which is the whole realm of like fail fast, tackle 60% and fail at this many and learn quickly and adapt. And it's like, where has that gotten us? People are exhausted. Women and caregivers are leaving the workforce in droves. So I do think that this like new wave of like innovation means fail fast and like try all this stuff. It is spawning this dysfunction that goes to your second part, which is like, what's the impact on the human? We are not designed to go from failure to failure to failure to failure like that. That's not how human beings are. We need to pause and like identify what's going on, how are we feeling about it, what's going on in our bodies and our minds and our families. And before we get into like action, that's what most companies do, right? Action, reaction, action, reaction. And here we go. We may pause. I literally think I posted on this morning on LinkedIn to have like an hour-long lessons learned session, check the box, had the lessons learned, but did we? Because usually we're stopping to look at what failed on the project system initiative. We don't stop and say, where are we failing our people? But we kind of need those people to move on to the next initiative. And so it's this like flywheel of just dysfunction. I think that's the only word that's coming to me. So when I think about what you said is like, how is organizational resilience related to personal? There is no organizational resilience. I mean, there isn't. I mean, unless you just have an organization that is, well, it's not even technology because the people are building the technology. So we have to start with the individual and recognize that, one, resilience means something different to everyone. Take what's been shared here today, being a woman of color, being an immigrant, being a caregiver, whatever it is, we all come from our certain perspectives where resilience is so informed by our life experience. So we need to lean in there and build individual resilience. And then collectively, we can start to harness those skills, which will in turn build resilient organizations. But as soon as we start with the organizations and go backward, I think we're doomed. And this whole fail fast thing is just, I just think it's just a recipe for a disaster.
Mm-hmm. Tanal.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there, Jen. I find that the startup culture has created this false sense of urgency where we're always like trying to go, go, go. And I remember one founder that I was working with, and he was surprised that his employee didn't want to respond to Slack messages at 9 p.m. And, you have to actually, as a leader, set those boundaries and make sure that you're not on the way to burnout. Being on 24/7 is not the way to get a high performance culture. And that's where you see the dysfunction. And so making sure that one, there are some, processes in place and mindfulness in terms of where are we when are we having meetings, especially as a global organization. How are we putting space for people to think and instead of just react? So from an organizational perspective, you can apply the personal best practices of resilience. So Lucy Hone is like this researcher around resilience, and she's an expert on the topic. And she says there are three things that help people be resilient. One is the expectation that adversity is going to happen. It does not discriminate. So just by knowing that, it helps you prepare for it. And then two is knowing where to focus. There are going to be all these different challenges coming at you, and there's going to be macroeconomics happening, but how do you filter out the noise and focus on the areas that really matter to you? And three, asking yourself, is this helping or hurting? So thinking again on the long game and from a people perspective, not just, hey, let's just do a mass layoff right now because we want to meet our quarterly gains, but then next quarter you have disengagement, you have people that are worried about their jobs. So how do you balance these dichotomies? And it's really important for for leaders to be leading by example and making sure that they're putting in the structures and the processes that come with a people first lens instead of just plugging in a band-aid, because we know that all these wellness initiatives are not really working. You can't put a wellness initiative and then expect people to work 24/7. It just doesn't add up.
Susie.
No, I think that's great. And Tanel, I like how researched you are, and you bring all of these different points from your like knowledge base. So good for you. It's good to see someone well read. I think we're at a crossroads in the market. Like I was just thinking of it, just a different perspective on this. Like if you see where we're at right now, if you look at, I think the one metric I've been talking a lot about is like in the market. McKinsey did a study, I think across 7 countries, thousands of people. This is as of December, like last year. And it said that about 40%, so almost 1 in 2 employees are thinking of quitting their jobs in the next 3 to 6 months. Okay. So, and then, that's hard. Like as an organization, if you think about that, if you have your own business or you're trying to do anything, or you have a company with thousands and thousands of people, that 1 in 2 people are actively disengaged or going to quit. Right. And then turnover rates like have been during pandemic, like almost up to 1 in 2 people. Right now, they're about 20%. Like last year, the turnover rate for all industries, North America, for example, was 20%. 1 in 5 people are quitting. And if I do a lot of coaching, I work a lot in the innovation space, and, you talk, with lots of different people in different scenarios. And I think when I think about resilience, I think about, well, what's the reaction of most people in the scenarios I talk about with them? And a lot of it's like this and this happened, I'm going to quit. And I'm like, whoa. The first reaction doesn't have to be to quit. As like, it could be to acknowledge this situation sucks, or like, or that was hard, and we can move forward. So I think there's a piece of resilience there, like in terms of thinking about like just changing the mindset. Like there's such a talk track out there. Like if you look at LinkedIn, even like that, there's a lot of like every manager's bad, everything's toxic, everything's horrible. You know what I mean? And I think there's a part of like this resilience where we need to think about like, okay, like, yeah, things are hard. And sometimes you have to work through these scenarios and you're going to learn, right? And there will be good and bad factors of all of that, but you will learn. So when I think about just all of these factors together, that the companies are like faced with this whole, like everyone is quitting, the employees are feeling like everybody's being horrible to them, right? And you look at what the companies are doing, that they used to really focus on, and I think all of us have been in a room, like if you've been in those leadership meetings, like how do we retain people and how do we keep on going for the future to be a resilient organization? And you invest all of this money in and try to do, mental health programming, diversity programming, investing in benefits, so many different things. And then people still quit, right? So this is where we're at right now in the market, right? And because it's not meeting the mark for employees, and employees are putting all this effort in. So I will leave you with the final thought of like, if I think about the biggest resilience and adaptability thing we need to figure out is from an organizational perspective, because you asked about that, Manola, is like, we have to plan for not just retention anymore, but for sustainability. So companies need to restructure to think about like, there's going to be so much change. We're going to have to continually adapt. One of those big adaptations is how fast our people turnover. Like on average, you're going to have a whole new workforce every 5 years if 1 in 5 people are turning every year, right? So that adaptability and resilience as an organization, they need to think about like, how do you do it so you can keep on having people change seats, right? And still keep on going. And from a personal perspective, it's a different view of that. Is like, how do you keep on going and gain the skills that, you want to have when you're jumping into a place where everybody is also kind of new, right? And you're all trying to figure out how to move to that next milestone. So I don't know what everybody thinks, but there's a different view of resilience and adaptability. I was trying to get to the organizational spot, but those are my thoughts.
Thank you. Sundari, I saw you unmuted there for quite a while. You're on mute.
No, I was watching the conversation and getting excited. I like the perspectives both on the personal side and how it links to organizational. And I just want to touch on both just a little bit, teeny bit. One is like about, I think one of my friends wrote about escape key should be operational in your life's laptop all the time. So, what are you always saying no to so you can say yes to something more important? And I think that is something using quitting as a decision tool. So, quality of your decisions also depends on when you learn to quit things. I think, Jen, you talked about grit versus resilience, making that, we have to get gritty. We have to, just hunker up and be there and do it. No, I think sometimes it's the quality of your decisions to start a course of actions determines how well you'll maximize the quality of your life, and also learning to say no at the same time. And I remember there was this lady, Emma Harris, who was Glow London's chief executive, and she was flying around between New York, Chicago, London quite a lot. She was keeping her exercise routine, she was doing her hit classes, and she was literally fueling herself by coffee by day and espresso martinis by night. And one morning, when she was having brunch with her team at a restaurant in New York, she just collapsed. She stopped breathing and she collapsed. Luckily, there was a doctor in the house, and they took her and they revived her, and she had to really rethink what she was doing as her lifestyle. She was a healthy person, she had a healthy heart, no genetic conditions. It was just a perfect storm of stress. So, as a person who's a CEO who's leading it, what is the kind of leadership image are you creating? She was trying to be an active member of her school PTA for her kids. She was doing everything. And she was actually posting this message about this issue from her ICU bed. She posted a message on LinkedIn about this. And that also says a lot about what you should not be doing, maybe. You're in the ICU after all. And I think she says that a lot of occasions in a previous role as head of communications of Eurostar, she expected her staff to be partying with her till 3 a.m. and be at their desk at 8 a.m. the next day. And I've seen this happen with investment bankers in Hong Kong, work hard, play hard kind of a thing. So some of these are at a personal level, really looking at your routines. What are you setting tone for? At a leadership level, what are you doing? What are you showcasing as resilience, right? As, oh, yeah, we have to do all of it and all that. But tilting it a little bit to organizational thing, I think on the fail fast part of it, I always think about some of these things that happened in terms of organizations, about acknowledging or not acknowledging failures. How are you reacting to failures? And General Mills had introduced a snack called Wahoos to take on Frito-Lay at one point of time. The launch just failed, and many of the people who worked on that snack project were let go, and it created what was called the Wahoo's hangover. So, in the midst of product development, they will all go around to say, oh, we don't want to have another Wahoo's movement. And the team would just choose a safe course of action. So almost it became like Wahoo's was that which shall not be named, that which shall not be talked about. And I think at an organizational level, really encouraging prototyping, early learning, early failures in that sense for innovation to help with the innovation process, and looking at how can you take the risk appetite and remove the negative perception of failure. So I would twist resilience to that extent in terms of being adaptable and really, being able to share your failures, talk about your failures, acknowledge your failures, and move on.
Thank you. Dalit, you're in the hot seat of going last on this one.
Yeah, and so much to tell about it. It was fascinating. First of all, I think that yes, we do need to tackle both sides, the individual from one hand, but also the organizational part, which is extremely important. And I think it has to do a lot with leadership. Bless you. It has to do a lot with leadership and lead by example. And I remember that I used to work with an executive leader who used to come every morning to work at 5 a.m. and used to leave the office at around 11 p.m. or even sometimes around midnight. And when I felt close enough to him, I came to him and told him, look, you cannot do it anymore, because you set the standard so high, no one actually can compete with you. The entire employees in your group, they actually gave up because no way they can come before you and no way they can leave after you, right? So you need to go home. Not for, as far as I'm concerned, go elsewhere, but don't be at work. And this is how you also can build resilience from the top, and lead by example, and convey a message to the organization. I don't want you 24/7 here at work. I don't expect you to work so hard. I also expect you to have a life. And I think it also has with two more items. One, Jen, you spoke about organizational culture. So we need to build culture of, in one hand, resilience and adaptability, but also vulnerability and humanity, which also can build the resilience over time. And I agree with you, Sundari, when you mentioned at the end that there is a range. I don't think that resilience is a bad term. It's not a good one, right? It depends where you take it. Same goes to adaptability. And by the way, every value that we can pick and choose, probably we can find bad examples or very good ones on the same value.
Listening to all of you, I was just reminded, I shared this on a previous panel as well. One of the best definitions of resilience I heard from a friend of mine, and she said that resilience is not about bouncing back, but it's about bouncing forward. So I do want to give Debbie the full credit. Now, we also have adaptability as part of our topic. And Susie, I do remember you started us off with great energy around adaptability. So I will ask you to lead us into this. Let's maybe take 1 minute each and talk about adaptability. And one idea that I had listening to you and also keeping an eye on the comments, I have a feeling that there are a lot of cultural nuances, a lot of maybe generational nuances, a lot of, for lack of a better generic term, intersectionality nuances on resilience and adaptability. So can we also look at adaptability through this lens?
That's a really good question and thought, because this is like an ongoing kind of like adjustment and I guess just learning to play at work today, right? And if I think about adaptability, I'll give you a real example for myself. So, I was working with someone the other day and she was saying, Susie, it's so hard to manage people. And I was like, okay, what's going on? And then I went through, I was like, you know what? Like, I was like, listen, this is about me adapting too. I used to work at GE. I was trained in like GE and other companies in multiple development programs. That was the era of my growing up in business, right? And lots of money invested in me and my peers and like going through all these development programs. And then I would develop other people. And I'd be so proud to develop people on my team. I'd spend time with them, like hip to hip, developing them. Like I would say I was a 12 out of 10 leader, right? Then one day I was like in a job, like at a tech company where it was a highly autonomous environment. And I was working with someone on my team to deliver something to our CEO. And I said, okay, I was like, let's work together, like every day, 4 hours, spend time together and, kind of work towards putting a product together. On day 3 of like kind of working out this thing, she turned to me and she said, Susie, she's like, do you think I'm doing a bad job? And I said, no, like this is somebody who's amazing, like a 10 out of 10, right? And I was like, why do you think that? She's like, why are you spending so much time with me? And I was like, whoa. And I was like, you know what this is? And she's like, what? And I was like, sad. I was like, this is so sad. I was like, I thought, like I was giving you my 120%, right? As a leader and as a person that I just really wanted you to kill it and be ready and like well packaged up for this important discussion. And you thought, what this is suspicious because you're so used to working by yourself and no one ever doing this with you, right? So for me, this was like a major aha. Like this is a reflection point for me. I'm like, whoa, I just shifted from being like a 12 out of 10 leader to a 2 out of 10, right? Because I need to adapt, because what worked before and the way that I kind of grew up in business, you know, even though that was kind of like the silver star, like cross of all that stuff, right, is now like not what people need, right? They want something different. They want to reshape that. I need to adapt to think like, how do I work with someone who generally really wants to work autonomously and wants feedback in a different way. So for me, like my best advice about being adaptable or in any scenario is just to recognize that most of it's in communication, right? Most of this is a process or communication thing. It's never personal about adapting, right? You can be upset about so many different things, but what I've learned over the years is that usually, you know, for me, it was like, good, she asked this, she communicated with me. She let me know that she thought that I was like big brother with her, right? And I was like, whoa, that was so not the intention, right? And it gave us the opportunity to talk about that, and then I can adapt. Right. So I invite everybody who's listening or to think about that. Like adaptability is that. Like make sure when you're feeling something or think it's off, like usually people have good intention, right? So like how do you actually shift together, and like how can you just talk about that and move forward? So
Great story. Talit.
Yeah, I want to also tell a story, but it's not from the organizational world. It's actually very personal because a few years ago I moved to the States together with my family. I have two boys. We used to live in New Jersey, Jen, as well. And I took them, they were quite young back then, and they needed to adapt. They need to go to school. My youngest was in the first grade, so he didn't know English at all. He didn't know yes, no, or to distinguish between those two. And for him, he was like, I sent him to school, to public school, and he was sitting there. And for him, it was like, you can imagine, hearing all day the teacher speaking in a language that he doesn't understand for almost 2 months until he started to pick up the language. And also my oldest, he went to seventh grade, had to make new friends and, a different environment, different language, and down all the way from the other side of the world. And it made them, both of them, we are back now, a few years now, we are back in our home country. It made them very resilient, obviously. And I learned from that if you want to make people, and organization, family, it's organization by itself as well, to make them resilient, you need to expose them to changes, to challenges, and to make them overcome, to make them go, to the other side very capable with a good experience and very positive one that they can do it. So I think we can take it also to organizations and how to make organizations and people in the organization more resilient by making them adapt to new situations. That they sometimes, they even cannot imagine that they can go through this experience and go out from the other side very capable and successful.
Jen.
Thank you so much for bringing in children as an example. I swear organizations could be more effective if we sometimes just let like the 11 or 12-year-olds tell us what to do. But I think that what you're touching on, and I think about my kids are the same age, they're now 9 through 14. And when I think about what they did during COVID, same thing, right? At a kindergartner, a first grader, a fourth grader, what they went through and how they adapted was, ridiculous, insane. When we look back now, we think we've been reflecting a lot this week because as we're coming up on sort of the 4th year anniversary of what that was. And I think we can learn a lot from kids. They go through the motions. However, I want to add an additional piece to that. I think that one of the things that why I've become most passionate about it is I think that even our culture from a young age, we reward the behaviors of the getting through it and the adapting. Good for you. You did that. You learned the thing. You got on the team. You made the friend. You did the stuff. We don't stop to check in. How are they feeling about it? And the more we sort of put the kind of gold star on top of it, I think it gives them the message that however they're feeling about it is less important. And I will say that one of the most, the most profound experience I've had was attending a funeral of a 13-year-old who decided it was too much. And when I think about the impact of especially these young people, building resilience in young people, I think we have to just be really cautious. It's absolutely valid. I'm like 100% what you said, exposing them to these things, letting them fail, putting them in new situations, and creating the space and making sure with intention that we are checking in and we understand the emotional impact on them. None of us were raised with that. I can say with 99.9% certainty, our generation and those before us were not raised to talk about our emotions. So I think that's where I would just say expand it. And when you take it to the workplace, I had one of my team members several years ago who I finally forced out on leave because I had my finger on the pulse of her behaviors and how she was showing up. And she said afterward that I recognized her depression before her husband did. And so I think as an organization, we talk about this adapting and this sort of situational leadership. It's person to person, and it's even within the person, situation to situation, moment to moment, to day. And so as a leader, that's where I think there's so much pressures on leaders right now. And we have to focus on giving them the skills to take care of themselves, first of all. Someone, I don't remember who said the oxygen mask. We have to start there so they can model the way. Too many of the people think they're leading the way by modeling the wrong thing. What works for you as a rich white man on the Upper West Side does not work for the single mom commuting into the office. So I got a lot of things to say on this topic, but thank you for opening the space to include children, because I think it's just really important that we zoom out a little bit and think about this next generation coming into the workplace.
Thank you. Sundari.
Jen, really, really, powerful, and thanks for sharing as well. Couldn't have been easy talking about it. So thanks for sharing. I mean, I think there was this one futurist who asked this question to a group saying that, do you think we are leaving the world a better place for the next generation? Are we leaving the place on a worse way for the next generation? And maybe this is the question that our parents asked us, and they definitely thought that they were leaving it in a better place. And today, if we were asked that question about, I think it'll be sort of 50-50. Maybe we don't know whether we are leaving it in a better place. Definitely not on climate change and other things, but definitely not in sometimes and even in our leadership ways. So really, really thoughtful conversation. I want to go back to the cultural angle there. Minla, you talked about, how is it playing out in different cultures and all that. And the area where I am in Hong Kong and in China, a lot of it is very hierarchical culture. So leadership and nurturing and being innovative, helping people be adaptable is also very, very difficult in a hierarchical thing. And that's why I think leaders can make that switch. There was somebody who used to work as a head of consumer banking at Standard Chartered, and he moved from Singapore to China. And this is like 2014, something like that, around that timeline. And the cultural expectation of his job was to visit the branches and put pressure on branch managers to cut cost. So branch staff would spend weeks anxiously preparing for this head's visit. And I'm sure this sounds familiar for a lot of people who work in branches and who work in very hierarchical structures. So he wanted to change. Jung Kyu Choi was the name of that head, and he wanted to change that perception. Instead of emphasizing his formal power, he would land up at these branches unannounced, start his visit by serving breakfast to the branch employees. And then he would hold huddles and he would ask them, how can I help you improve your branches? Now, the branch employees were totally shocked, surprised, taken aback. They didn't know how to react because this was not the norm. This was not the leadership they had seen. But he changed that and he just tempered down their anxiety and asked them to give out ideas. And over the course of the 1 year that he was there, he visited 80 branches across 25 cities. And over a period of time, people started telling him the pain points. Initially, it'll be something simple like, oh, we need to just upgrade our computer memory and this and that and all that. And over a period of time, because he was responding, the ideas became larger. And one of the branches used to be inside a shopping mall. And in the huddle, the employee said, what if we open and close that branch as per the mall operating hours? So we work the weekends as well. Now, if a branch manager had suggested it, they would have put their hand up and said, no, 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 we won't work weekends. But the suggestion came from the team. They wanted to experiment and they checked it out. And this particular branch really generated a huge income generation over the weekend. And that's because he created that space. It was not an idea, it was not his idea. He didn't push it down. Again, in a very traditional hierarchical way, he didn't do any of that. And the customer satisfaction in this place increased by 54% at the end of his 2 year stint. And the complaints came down by 29%. And I think this is where, as leaders, we are talking about adaptability. Leaders also need to be adaptable. It's not that the innovation only comes from them. They need to be open to receiving those innovations and creating those low risk spaces for the employees to experiment, find out new things, build their creativity, and try different things, even in structures which are very traditional and very hierarchical. There are cultural nuances. People are not expecting you to be nice, and they expect you to come and control them, kind of thing. But even there, it's possible to bring in all that, and that's where the innovation, adaptability, resilience actually plays out in a slightly different way.
Thank you. Tanal, do you want to bring this conversation home?
A lot of things to say. A very good conversation. I know we're up on time, so I'll bring it all together. I do enjoy this idea of what you said earlier, Manola. I think it was one of your colleagues that said dance forward. And for me, it's actually fail forward. So really, the acceptance that failure, that there is no failure, it is just learning in the experimentation in the organization, but at a personal level, at an organizational level. So when we are looking at things and experimenting, how are we celebrating those failures? How are we thanking people to make sure that they feel safe in experimentation? Because we have seen traditionally incumbents being taken over by startups, right? Those big corporations going out of business because they didn't fail to adapt. They failed to, do what Sundari was saying about adapting their leadership style, their hierarchical, decisions. And so to bring it all home, I do think, to be resilient, to be innovative and going forward, we need to nurture this idea of failing forward, learning fast, but also giving people the space they need. So let's say we're going into AI mode. There's a lot of fear right now about what AI brings. So how do you help people along that journey, educate them what AI is and is not, put in the protocols around it, and also train the team and the people and put the resources there for people to start learning about it and not just, letting people off go because they don't have the technical skill sets. We already see that as HR leaders, we have a talent shortage. So why not bring those two together and say, okay, well, we do have the talent. Maybe they don't have the capabilities, but we can invest in them for the future. That is a learning. That's an experimentation. There, you're creating a pipeline. You're creating trust. You're creating a future for your organization and for the people around you.
Thank you so very much, everyone. And we are literally a couple of minutes away from saying goodbye. And it's very painful and it's very frustrating because we could have gone on for at least 1 more hour. But I do want to make sure that we also bring a little bit of an HR flavor into our conversation. So for the mic drop wrap-up round, I will ask each and one of you, and in the interest of time, please make it a sentence. And I know, witnessing your insights, I know that this is a big challenge. So one sentence, can you give an example of an HR resilient behavior or an adaptable HR behavior? So what is the HR flavor for our conversation, or what is an innovative HR leadership behavior? I will give you a few seconds to think about it and also to compress it in one sentence. In the meantime, I will thank everybody in the audience for being here, and we hope that you enjoy this conversation just as much as we have. And thank you so very much for being here. Now we will do this counterclockwise. So Jen, one behavior.
Fast. Get curious, practice active listening, and keep an open mind.
Thank you. Dalit.
Yeah, I would go with open-minding and be curious as well.
Thank you so much. Sundari.
I would have to go with communication, keep the channels open, and allow exchange of ideas, be there for them.
Thank you so much. Tanal.
I want to say people. As HR, we are, people first. So creating your people around you, that support network that is going to help you through the good times and the bad. Author Daphne, one of my favorite authors, Daphne Jones, says it's an invisible cane that you can lean on. And, it could be faith, it could be family, but it gives you that positivity. It gives you that extra boost. I think we need that because we do give a lot of it to the people in the organizations we work with. So that's one way for HR to get their own oxygen as they move forward.
Thank you so much. Susie.
I would say be brave and take actions, but never go it alone.
Susie, Tanal, Sundari, Dalit, and Jen, thank you so very much. I knew that this would feel like sunshine, and I do believe that we just managed to get ourselves a blockbuster in the Hacking HR panel recording library. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Jessa, for taking care of us. And I do look forward to welcoming as many of you as possible in our future conversations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.